If I was West Deer Township's public relations manager, I would probably tell them to lay off the transparency conversation for a little while. But lo and behold, they used our annual newsletter, the one that they put in your mailbox for you to enjoy for the next year of your life, to try to redefine what transparency is. And I hate that we have to talk about it. They tell us in the newsletter itself what they are calling transparency. This is something we've talked about before. It's frustrating to have to keep talking about this, but they lay it out there for you. They say, transparency is a simple concept. Information should not be hidden from residents, hence transparent or able to be seen. And then it goes on to say that contrary to the beliefs of some, West Deer is transparent. If we have information, we give it to anyone who asks. Transparency requires two parties working together. A resident's role in transparency is to simply ask. Township staff cannot read your mind, but after getting a request, it is our role to get you the information that you desire. So let's get one thing straight. Government transparency does not require two parties. It's government transparency. It shouldn't necessarily have to be asked for. It's what you're showing us before being asked. Here's a jar of pennies. Let's say I keep track of this, but it's your pennies. And anytime you want, you can come in here and you can look at them and you can count them and you can inspect them. Why? Because it's a transparent jar and it's available to you anytime. You don't have to come asking for it. It's just here. But this jar isn't transparent. And what's in there is a mystery. What the township is saying is that this is transparent because all you have to do is ask for it, and then we will show you what's inside. The problem is sometimes they don't. There's a full page in the newsletter about the new municipal building, which is great, to be honest. Has all the numbers in there. That's fantastic. Transparency would be showing you all this information without the residents having to have first clawed and begged for this information. How do I know? Well, I've been on Facebook. I've looked. I've listened to public comment. I have seen public records requests that went to appeals where West Deer Township has fought into appeals from giving you this information. That's not transparency. And that's why it's frustrating when at the bottom of this definition of transparency, they say, you do not need right to know requests. Township staff hates right to knows because they take a lot of time and cost a lot in required legal review. That's not true. What costs a lot is them fighting against giving you that information. That's what costs a lot. Back in February, I put in a right to know request myself. It was for text messages that had been sent between the township manager and the supervisors. Any text message that had to do with the operations of government. I don't want private text messages. I don't want any of that. If you're talking about government business, I would like to know what that is. There is well-established case law, just in case you're wondering, that we're entitled to that information. But they denied my request and they said, we're not going to give this to you. If I would have submitted that in an email or if I would have walked into the township building, they would have also denied it. But I would have had no recourse at all. But since I put it in as a right to know, I did have recourse. I could appeal it and say, look, this has been well established. But they fought it tooth and nail. And it was expensive for them to fight it. And Bev Jordan never hesitates to tell me how much that right to know request is costing the taxpayers. A couple months ago, she told me it was $7,500 or $8,000 in legal fees alone just to get that information for me. She's pushing it on me for costing everybody all this money because I decided to put it in as a right to know. But that right to know request is there to protect you and it holds them accountable. You want to know why they hate it? It's because of that. So what happened? You want to know what happened? I went to appeals and I won. Clearly established case law. And they continued to fight. Again, this was back in April. Now we're going into May. And finally, the Office of Open Records got back to them and said, you have 60 days to provide this to the public. And they waited until the 60th day. Why? Because they can. I'll let them have that little bit of fun. And what they provided, and I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to see them. They provided a scan of the digital image of the text messages that was then redacted out. Certain information can be redacted and then scanned again to the point where much of the information was barely legible. So now what? Well, I had to go back to appeals and say they're deliberately dragging their feet. And their lawyers fought that. And then the Office of Open Records had to go back to them again and say, you got to do better than this. So they've already been told that this is public information, but they will fight it so hard with your money and then be so quick to blame you for it. I don't know how much this is costing us now. I'm sure we're north of $10,000. Just this one request. Yeah, right to know requests, they can cost $0, just like an email can cost $0. But if you put it in as a right to know request, they're held to a standard and they will sick their lawyers on it on your dime to fight tooth and nail from something that should look like this. Actually, that looks like this. This is not transparency. Transparency doesn't require me to have to beg and claw for you to open this jar and show me how many pennies are inside. It should be, boom, on the ready to give to us. They absolutely don't do that. So all the other places in this newsletter where they caution you about where you get your information, you need to give that same scrutiny to the newsletter itself and ask yourself, are they being honest with me? Listen, guys, I am not anti-government. I have shown you examples on this channel of the little cities and townships that do it right, that do a great job and foster collaboration with their residents and foster communication back and forth with their residents. We deserve that. And they're not giving it to us. Why? It's inconvenient to them for one reason or another. And they will use your money to fight against it. So you want to know why right to know requests are expensive? Because they're fighting tooth and nail, not because we're making the requests. So I hope you understand my frustration. When they put out a newsletter, and in that newsletter, they tell you multiple times in multiple articles to be careful and to be cautious about looking at social media and trusting what you see there. But with that same level of scrutiny that they're asking you to have for people expressing their opinions online, I want you to have that same level of scrutiny when you read the information that they're putting out to you. Because some of this is indeed great information about your community, about what are the cool things that we're going to get in our parks. What are the activities that are going to be at the upcoming community days? I love that. That's important to put out there and to share. But please don't pepper that information with the same degree of propaganda that you're warning us against elsewhere. That's the difference.